Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast, here with Benji Naesen for the BORA-hansgrohe preview, 2022 preview. Yes, we have some January Mallorcan races, but they don't move the needle for a lot of these big teams, which we have left, including Bora, Jumbo-Visma, etc. And so we're not out of time. We've got the Bora preview here. We also have an interview with Matt Walls, who had an incredible Neo-Pro season that kind of went under the radar even amongst his British compatriots in this episode. And separately to this, somewhat related, we have an interview with Janto Barker, which is separate, the founder of Locol, our show partner, and who, relevant to BORA-hansgrohe, are back in the World Tour as the apparel provider for BORA-hansgrohe in 2022. So I have an interview with him where we discuss things like, why did you want to come back into the World Tour? Some businessy stuff that I always personally am interested in. But Benji, I was bullied, harassed, harangued, shamed by our own audience regarding my hair. Clearly fixed it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. I feel like, should I have just not bowed to the peer pressure and gone full mullet again? It is good for the algorithm.
Yeah, I think it was good because people were commenting on it, so it brought engagement. But in all honesty, it looks better now, let's be honest. So it looks a bit more professional, even though we're not the most professional podcast in the business.
I actually think we are. I reckon we are pretty professional. Anyway, we'll do the usual. We'll recap their 2021 season, BORA-hansgrohe, do their transfers briefly, talk about what to expect in 2022, and then some hot takes, etc. Obviously, there's been some schedule announcements, so we will factor them in. Also want to let you all know that we have a big announcement dropping tomorrow, primarily probably on our Twitter in the first instance at Lanterne Rouge CP, that will affect the podcast for the entire year. So just teasing that if you want to see that announcement, that's where it will be, but we'll also put it across the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast YouTube channel, etc. But getting into that now, their 2021 season, Benji, top 5 in the Tour with Kelderman, pretty good. Buchmann crashed out of the Giro, who's going to be their GC man there. 8 World Tour wins, 2 Tour de France stage wins, both from the break with Conrad and Pollitt, who actually both men who do not win much, like frequently, and then a Giro win with Sagan. Sagan also won at Romandy and Catalonia, so pretty good season with 8 World Tour wins, and then 30 overall wins with a lot at sort of Sibiu and other smaller races. How would you rate it, noting the Buchmann Giro crash where he probably would have topped 5 or 6, one would think?
I'm saying on par. I'm not going to say that it's the best season they've ever had. It's not the best season they've ever had. And I think it's just an average to good year because, yes, they're getting to Tour de France stage wins. I'd like to have seen at least a stage win in the Vuelta, and perhaps they had one at the Giro, but I kind of feel like 5 stage wins in Grand Tours would fit more in Bora's category with the riders they had. Yes, Sagan didn't have the best preparation at the start of the season either. I'm pretty sure he had COVID at the start of the season last year, just like at the start of this year's season. So not the best preparation for the season for sure. But I think that Ackermann underperformed, let's be honest about it. And he then tried to beat people in the kindergarten races like Settimana Ciclista Italiana and Sibiu Cycling Tour, for example. So that's that's an easy way to get victories when you're was one of the best sprinters in the world before you had a bad season. But like you said, a Matthew Walls at the start, definitely a strong rider, and not necessarily the rider that we would have said at the start of the season that was going to take 2 pro wins for the team, for example. We also saw Jordi Meus trying to grow up a bit more, getting a victory at Tour de Hongrie, for example, and just the youngsters starting to get victories too. I think that while Pollitt is not the most entertaining rider when it comes to his victories, like the Tour de France stage where he won, it's not the most entertaining stage of the Tour de France, let's be honest, but he does it. He wins stages, and he does so in the Tour de France, he does so in the Deutschland Tour, winning the Deutschland Tour. Obviously, that's not the most entertaining race either, but I guess there's a pattern there. But what's your take on their season? Also on par?
I think so. I mean, it might have looked a bit better with Buchmann not crashing out, and also Leonard Kamner, who's maybe like one of the top 3 talented guy on the team, incredibly talented, looked good at Catalonia, won stage 5 there out of the break after a Tour de France breakout and Dauphiné breakout in 2020. he was unwell in 2021, and I understand is coming back, even according to PCS, at Saudi in a few days. So that's really good to see. 25-year-old German Leonard Kemner, obviously soft spot for Leonard Kemner, obviously, and he's back. So that's really encouraging. But Ackermann, Benji, yeah, the fallout, and Rudiger's, it's one of the biggest transitions BORA-hansgrohe are undergoing of any
Yeah.
team, I think, in World Tour. The Sagan era is gone. Sagan's gone with Os and Juraj to Total Energies, and then the sprint train is gone. Ackermann plus Zelig and Schwarzman, those guys are off to Lotto and UAE. So huge transition there. And
The thing about it is that they're ditching a sprint train, and then they get Sam Bennett as their new sprinter, and they have to get a lead out again.
yeah,
But they get another one. Do you think that we've spoken about the transfers before? I think we should low-key mention them for certain once again. Sam Bennett, Van Poppel, and when it comes to the rest of that sprint train, Archbold and Mullen, I think, are the riders that fit in that train. Do you think that's a good change from the riders like Zelig, Ackermann to Bennett, Archbold, and Van Poppel?
I mean, Zelig and Schwarzman weren't performing. Well, particularly Schwarzman. Zelig okay at Deutschland. So I don't know. It's not like it's coming from Merkur to these ones, but yeah, they even have already put out press releases where Van Poppel or someone was saying, "Oh, you should, we're gonna have to wait until until it's all clicking, with Bennett." Van Poppel, I think, could be a good lead out man. He's a pretty good rider, but it's not a top lead out. So no, there's problems there I'm already foreseeing. In terms of climbing, then we have, and yes, we did a full Bora transfer reaction back in several months ago, but just as Benji said, for clarity, Vlasov, talented Russian who fourth at the Giro, but a better 2020 season from Astana. Agita from EF, who's had actually a bit of a underperformed last 18 months or so, although crashed in the Tour. Jai Hindley from DSM after his Euro podium and stage win. Those three is such an odd combination. I've already said it, Benji, but they kind of all do the same thing, except for Igita. But Vlasov, Hindley, Buchmann, Kelderman, they're all that second or third tier GC guy. None of them win World Tour GC races, I think, ever with any real at all. Not a lot of wins there. And it's sort of at odds with what Ralph Denker said before about is it a superstar league like the NBA, signing big names like Sagan? Who do you think will be the top guy out of their GC guys, the 4 or 5 they have?
I think the problem there is, I would say that Vlasov is their top guy of the riders that they have. But the thing there is that they're going to send him to the Tour de France, which means that he won't get the top result of the riders that they have. Because I think if you
Good
send,
point.
let's say, Vlasov to the Giro, he will probably get top 5 again, perhaps fight for the podium, and as a consequence, come out with a good result and be seen as a top guy. But if he goes to the Tour de France, then a podium is going to be very difficult against the riders that are lining up there. So I think it's a difficult thing to look at. I'm just curious how they're going to set up their season, and I've already spotted that they said that they wanted to send the Bennett train to the Tour de France and Vlasov to the Tour de France as well, and then that indeed makes sense. But on the other hand, it's like, okay, yeah, Vlasov, well, I don't think he's going to podium the Tour de France that easily.
Yeah, and his climbing really took a step back last year, although his TT improved. As Benny said, the Giro team, though, they're sending the combo of Hindley and Kelderman again, who maybe Wilco's not that excited to see Hindley back after that DSM Giro. They're going to the Giro with Buchmann. I don't know. I think Kelderman's the best of those three. Kelderman's been very unlucky with crashes, but then there's no TTKs. I don't know. It's interesting. Igita, on the other hand, who broke onto the scene with a Vuelta stage win back in 2019 and second on GC at California when he was, I think, like 21 or something. He struggled in some of the harder stages, as a Tour particularly in that first week, and then he came good. Actually, was quite good at the back end of the Tour, but it was a bit late then. Hasn't won for quite a while, despite being very fast for someone.
Yeah.
I know he's fast. Remember, he beat Bala in a sprint or something.
Yeah, but then again, Bella has not always been the fastest in the last years. But I agree, he's definitely a fast man, and we've seen it on multiple finishes. But he always comes like 2% or 1% short of the victory, and he's always in like strong breakaways that make it, but he's not always the strongest in that breakaway. And I would have liked to see him line up for both the Giro and the Vuelta, but apparently he's only lining up for the Vuelta as he's being sent to the Hill Classics, which I kind of understand. But we're talking about a lot of like schedules right now, but let's talk about a schedule that is not well settled yet. Let's talk about an area of expertise for this team that I'm looking at and I'm like, okay, on paper they got weaker there, but have they? What do you think their cobble squad is going to be?
Well, that's the transfer. It's Marco Haller and Jonas Koch. These are the two men that Benji's, I think, alluding to. They've come in from Bahrain and Intermarché, Austrian and a German. Haller was very, very good for Bahrain, the cobble
Yeah.
races. And I think that's one of two of the men. Then there's Niels Perlet, obviously. That's sort of their main leader, I thought, particularly in something like Roubaix. Perstelberger for some of them. Martin Lars, no. You're right. You're asking the good question, Benji, in that who is their Gent-Wevelgem sprinter?
Oh, we saw that last year Bennett got over the climbs and again to Wevelgem. Will they try that again? That's the question that I'm looking at. Is he not going? Okay. Well, then Jordi Meus, I think, could be an option. Is he going to Gent-Wevelgem? He is. So that might be the option there. And I heard that Jordi Meus is going to be focusing more on the cobble races as well. I'm curious how far he can get that because at the end of last season, Jordi Meus had a bit of a Danny Van Poppel moment where the last months he got third at Hoogseppel, second at Grand Prix de Denain, which had a lot of cobbles, second at the Eurometropole Tour, winning the Paris-Bourges race. Like, that's solid racing. And I'm curious if that's going to grow out in a classics type sprinter more than a pure sprinter. I see the option, but I need to see it first, I think.
No, I agree. I think you're really onto something there. You look at the back end of his year. It was his neo-pro year, by the way, last year, Jordi Meus. He struggled in some of the hillier stage races, of which he was sent to a lot of. And to not whenever he did any classics, he half the time he got a top 7 result. Even his fourth race at Denilith Nikirikos, that came fourth pro race, and then the back end of the year was very good. So yes, I think him and Van Poppel and Haller and Koch and Pollard, it's not a bad squad. There's just not a tier. Would you say I wouldn't say Pollard's a tier A guy for like
No,
RVV or
I don't think so.
just Roubaix maybe. What about the last couple of signings, Benji? Before we get on to a big question that we sort of have been dancing around. Sjaan Uterbrooks, the next Remco, Belgian, he signed for them for 3 years at 18 years old. He's about to turn 19 in a month. I have a view on this, and I want to hear yours first.
Okay.
I don't. Do you think this is too early? Like this 18, I don't see it.
Kian Uiterbrooks, that's how you, I think, properly pronounce it. Just wanted to throw that in there because it's completely different to what you said. But this man is a rider that I believe is talented, and in the last weekend, which was the Mallorca races, has shown that, in my opinion, he deserves to be on a World Tour team with the abilities that he has. Because he was arguably the third strongest rider on Bora in those races. Now, is it too early? Well, Bora has the thing where they have to choose between two things. They start off on their Team Auto Eder Bayer junior team, and then you've got the Bora team. You don't have a U23 team for Bora, I think. So if they had a U23 team, perhaps he would be in there right now. But they don't have that, so they have to make the change because he's too strong to be in their junior team. And I think he's better off in their World Tour team, even though it might still be early, you know?
Yeah, I think Remco is the exception, and generally, like Uterbrooks results are not Remco's results, where it's
Yeah.
like this guy can immediately step up to World Tour. But Benji makes it the point that okay, there's no U23 team. They can get him on their equipment. They can get him in the team setup. They can he personally can be earning a bit more money straight away, and his schedule looks like a hard U23 schedule. There's no World Tour races that I can see at all. It's like
Yeah.
Saudi, Almeria,
I think that's
Thorn,
good.
Drone, Settimana, Benji already mentioned, is a U23 style race. Like a lot of the Jumbo U23s go there, and Lavenir. But Yeah, I think some, like Brenner, it's not seeming to be working out that well, Benji, although he got sent to World Tour races. So, yeah, I think I'm not expecting too much from him this year.
I don't expect him to start winning every race that he rides, quite certainly, like you mentioned. I think that he might pop up in longer breakaways or in a race where he might be attacking from the peloton and something might happen there. Like, he was very active in those Mallorca challenges that just happened. And that gives me hope that it might be more than just a young rider on that team and that he can actually do some stuff in the races that he rides in. I don't see him winning every single one, like you mentioned. So I'm kind of on board with you, but I'm slightly more positive, where I think that, yeah, I think the logic is just there where he's too strong for their junior team, so they have to put him in their Bora team, and they can't put him in the U23 team because otherwise someone else is gonna.
And Brenner got poached.
Yeah, exactly. There, he's a DCM, DSM, DCM.
It's basically a PCM development team. Anyway, so I forgive you for that Freudian slip, Benji. Last rider they signed is Joe Luers, who's a young German. He's more an example of what I'm like. This guy could really do some more time at U23. Like, he's 19. His 2021 results are like, they're quite good, but he didn't win. He won one race, a 2-1 at U20 at juniors or U23. So yeah, I'll see how he goes. 3-year deal there. He'll be paired a lot with the next Remco. Anyway, it's enough on their transfers. Before we get into the big question, I want to mention our show partner, Locol, who, as I said, this year returned to the UCI World Tour with BORA-hansgrohe. They've spent the past year putting together a world-beating package of kit that includes the fastest skin suits and speed suits, harnessing technology from their Project Aero collaboration with world-leading aerodynamics experts McLaren. And they kind of went a bit bold with it, Benji. Their kit, it's been well received. If you want to check that kit out, by the way, it is available on Locol's website at www.locol.cc. The link down below, and you can get 20% off with our code, all caps, LRCP 2022. Okay, Benji, the big question: how much do we think BORA-hansgrohe will miss Peter Sagan with his transfer to Total Energies?
I believe that they're going to miss him. Let's be honest about it. He was a big guy when it comes to his stature in the team and his marketing exposure for the outside world. And then we look at his results, and we have to be honest, they've gone down in the last while. Like, if you look at the last 5 years, the last year was definitely not the strongest of Sagan's career, which is an obvious thing to happen. Now, looking at 2021 in total, he still won, I think, was it 3 World Tour wins, Roman di Catalunya and in the Giro? Yes. And eventually took Ciclamino home as well. So that's of value for a team, quite certainly. But then the question is it worth the money that a team is paying for him? And would it not be a better idea to invest in the future? And that's where I think the decision was made. I think the decision was made on, we have Sagan for the next 2-3 years, but perhaps we should invest that money in trying to make sure we have a future rider that gets top results. Does that make sense?
I get that. I don't agree with it. I think Sagan is still really good. Like, 4th at MSR after just passing COVID, apparently. As Benji said, people don't just just pick a random guy off the street to win Ciclamino on a stage. Nittolo's been trying to win a Giro stage and just did for 8 years or something. He has, and now to talk about the commercials, 1.9 million Instagram followers, million plus Facebook followers, probably a million Twitter followers. And this sport is about exposure for your commercial partners. That's how the World Tour teams bring in money. And you look at Vlasov, even Higuita for Colombia, not that many Instagram followers, but Vlasov, Hindley, Kelderman, it's a digital media disaster. So, yeah, I think they'll miss him a lot. And I think it's very hard to when you get to the end of the year and you look at how much reach did we get, how many times did our kit get shown on TV, on digital media, how many times were our brands seen in social media posts, which is the primary mechanism for providing more information about your sponsors, BORA or hansgrohe, is digital media. It's going to be hard to replicate or match those reach numbers without Sagan. But as Benji said, maybe Benji, he had 5 mil, maybe they spent 2.5 mil in the transfer window this year, and they're going to go Carapaz or someone with the extra money at the end of this year. I don't know, but I think Sagan is still good. And like, listen, he said he got arrested 2 days before, and they said he was intoxicated before he won a stage at Romandy. Like, it's incredible. So
Perhaps he should drink more.
Perhaps. I mean, yeah, food for thought. But yeah, I think, and as you said, like we went through their cobbled squad, or who's their sprinter for Gen Wevelgem. He's won that like three or four times. He's just a natural slot leader for all those races. Like, do you think? I'll be eating my words. Do you think they're betting that Vlasov is good enough to podium the Tour in the next 3 years? Is that the bet they're making?
I think that's one of the bets they're making, and perhaps that's why they bet on multiple people, because they're not sure if one of them is enough to make it. Perhaps they're like, okay, there's X amount of chance that this leader makes it, there's X amount of chance that this leader makes it. What if we just get all second tier riders in the world? Perhaps we've got a chance of getting a podium with one of them. That kind of feels like their transfer season right now. And perhaps that's a replacement. But let's be honest, like, Vlasov's a young guy, and he's obviously not 20 anymore, but he's still a young guy compared to what Sagan is at when it comes to age. And then we look at Higuita, same story, also not the oldest guy. So I think they're more securing the next 5 years than with Sagan would be the next 2-ish years of getting results, you know?
Yeah, I know what you mean, but yeah, I also feel like there's higher quality GC riders to be signed in the next coming years, like a Carapaz. But Benji's right. When you look at Peter Sagan's PCS ranking, for example, per season, it's trending in the wrong direction. 2018 second, 2019 10th, 2020 17th, 2021 34th. That's not the right direction you want to see it going. And he's 32 years old, just turned 32. But I would argue he's had COVID now twice. He got crashed out of the Giro when he was in got crashed out of the Tour de France on stage 3 effectively. He had to abandon with a knee injury later, but he was in good position on stage 3, and then that affected him in later sprints where he still came top 5 twice in the coming days. That's affected his season. But yeah, I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how he goes on Total. I think Sagan's not done. I think 2 years is the right amount for Total, and maybe Bora just didn't want to match the money. I'm not sure. But there was the Froome exposure deal, and I think people might respond to me talking about, oh, he's got this many social media followers, saying, well, Froome has a lot of social media followers, but you yourself say that that's not worth that much. Sagan's not that bad. He's still relevant in races. He's still top 5, G1 in monuments, 15th at RVV. He's still winning races, and so that's why I think if you're just good enough to there and you're a superstar, I think it's worth it to pay the money. Okay, Benji, we know in reality who they're sending to the Giro. We've already said their cobbled squad, so I'll ask, what do you think their results will be in cobbled races? Do you see them winning any of RVV, Gen Wevelgem, E3, Kerner, Omloop type races?
No, I don't, but it wouldn't surprise me if the likes of a Jordi Meus gets a podium in an Omloop or in a Kuurne, something like that.
Agree.
In like last year, we had a sprint at the end of Omloop. If some similar scenario happens, which doesn't happen often, then a podium for Jordi Meus is possible. So I'd like to see that, and I honestly just want to see a rider like that grow throughout the cobble season as well. But I don't see Pollitt winning a cobble race. I see Haller being very attractive as a rider to see on the road, attractive attacks and so forth, but I don't see him getting the results.
One man we haven't mentioned, talking about now their Ardennes squad, we haven't mentioned him once, Maximilian Schachmann, probably their biggest German rider. After maybe if Buchmann does well this year, maybe that won't be true. But you spoke about in the Women's World Tour pod, Benji. He's like Kasia Niewiadoma. There's always someone a bit punchier uphill. there's always someone faster in a flat sprint, and always someone who maybe is a bit more endurance. But he's very consistent, and Amstel is really good evidence of that. Where he was like, to make that G1 with Peacock and Wout, you got to be pretty good, but he was never winning that sprint. Is he someone? Do you think they just roll it back with him? They go Liège, Flèche, Amstel, he's leader, or is Higuita they're hoping can be like a co-leader?
I'd put Higuita as co-leader, as backup leader, because something can always go wrong. Schachmann can be riding a Lombardy and suddenly a car pulls up right ahead of him, for example, like in 2020. Yep. Then again, he's still top 10 that race, so pretty cool story, mate. But at the start of this year, like you mentioned, yes, you're right. There's always someone better, but did get somewhat lucky that Roglic crashed on the final stage of Paris and was able to take that victory still. But in Hill Classics, I would definitely say that Schachmann should be the main leader, Higuita co-leader perhaps, or yeah, perhaps a more offensive leader, while Schachmann can try and be the follower and then be, I don't know. The problem with Schachmann is that he's also not the fastest in a reduced bunch or a reduced group, you know? If 5 people go to the line in LBL, he's likely not going to win that sprint because Pogacar has a punch, Roglic has a punch, Alaphilippe has a punch, Valverde, meh. So, yeah, I don't know.
I agree. I think it's tough to, like, even Olympics 10th and Tour de Suisse 4th, and he's just very consistent rider, and he's like 22nd in UCI ranking because he can top 10 almost any race on the schedule, and he's even a GC top 5 2 World Tour races this year and won one. But yeah, Schachmann, probably their leader for the Ardennes, and we'd be expecting to be supported by maybe even Aliotti in a couple. Of course, Ida Schelling, kind of the breakout year, Benji. I would give Ida Schelling freedom in those races to just do Ida Schelling things and say, don't attack at 60 Ks, ride for yourself a little bit. You're that good.
I would. It's difficult, you know, because you're going to need some domestique, certainly. But on one end, I also want to offer him that because I'm pretty hyped about what Ida Schelling can do. And he can be a free element for himself unless something happens with Schachmann where he needs to fall into a domestique role. I'd put it that way. Not necessarily say you're completely free and don't need to look after Schachmann. Schachmann should still be leader. Otherwise, you're telling your leader that, okay, we trust you as leader, but not as much to give you Schelling as well.
Yeah, I kind of get that. And then even like Patrick Conrad, top 15 Liège a couple of times. They got a pretty strong, pretty balanced, deep squad there. But as I said, no real like top finisher that we can see. Although, you know, Schachmann probably go and win it. Giro, Benji, Hindley, Kelderman, and Buchmann. Do you think they podium it?
I think they. I think they do. I think they've got an option to do it with one of their riders. The problem is with who, and they've actually got like 7 riders selected already for this race. It's not only Hindley, Kelderman, and Buchmann. They've got Kemna also in there, Aliotti, Zwihov, and Fabro. And like these are some pretty damn decent riders. Like we start off with Zwihov. Like he's a bit of a mixed bag. He's had good climbing performances. The recent Mallorca Challenge once again as an example where he was good. And then throughout the season last year, he was a bit average. Then Buchmann's the guy where you're like, okay, in the Giro last year, he would have perhaps top 5 if he didn't crash because he was looking better and better throughout the days. Then we look at Aliotti and he's like the talented guy. Youngster, likely going to be a proper domestique. I don't see him going for himself in that Giro really, as well. He's just not good enough yet. He's won, I think, was it Sibiu Cycling Tour? Yes, ahead of Aru, so that was pretty sad because I wanted to see a final victory for Fabio Aru there. But next to that, Jay Hindley had a pretty bad season last year. The year before, a podium to Giro. I see Hindley as the lowest of the 3, Kelderman and Buchmann, because he's just inconsistent at the moment, and there's nothing telling me at the moment that he's going to be at Giro 2020 form once again the entire Giro this time around. Fabro's a weird one, you know, because the guy top 5 Tirreno and was very strong on Prato-Ritivo, but the rest of the season he was a domestique and gets domestique results. So I would be looking at him for a domestique role once again. But the thing is, you've got so many leaders now, you kind of have to support them, and that makes it more difficult for a Fabro to get a stage win going in breakaways, you know, because I think he's going to be changed up.
They will have the strongest domestique possible. Kemna's doing the Giro. Kemna will probably be stronger than a lot of them, I would think, in the third week climbs.
One of their leaders, most likely.
It's a big call to come back
I
and
mean,
go straight to G. No,
better
I
than
don't.
one of their leaders.
Yeah. Like no, exactly. Like when Agita was dropping Uran in the
Yeah,
tour, sort of thing.
yeah.
I think that sort of thing might happen, or Pronsky and Vlasov go Pronsky in the Giro. Anyway, that's too much. Tour de France, as Benji said, will be Bennett plus Conrad. Bennett with his train and Purstelberger. I think. Let me check if Schachmann he's down to do it as well. So there's some punchy finishes there for Schachmann. And they'll just roll that out, and they'll have two strong guys in every break, and a good chance of winning a stage. Do you think Bennett? This is a question, Benji. Jakobsen with Merku, Caleb Ewan with not a great train himself. Do you think it'll be clicking by then? Do you think Bennett takes over under 1.5 Tour de France stage wins for Bennett, Benji?
According to Rolf Aldach, he said, "We believe we will have the strongest lead out in the world. So if we trust
No
that
shot. He said
man,"
that.
he said that. It's on an article of Cycling News 10 days ago. I just wanted to to drop that sentence in there because I found it so funny to read. I don't see it happening. But I think that Bennett is going to get a stage win in the Tour de France. I don't think he's going to consistently win stages in the Tour de France because the sprinting competition is just like last year. Half of the sprinters crashed out. We have to have 1 year where nobody crashes out. Please let it be this
I'm
one.
so sick of crashes before the
And
season's even
yeah,
started.
yeah, exactly. And it could also be that it's a bit of a chaotic sprint because you start off with the first proper sprint stage is the one, isn't it? The one over the big Danish bridge where
Yeah,
echelons could really tear it apart. And if that happens, well, they've actually got a pretty strong team for echelons. If you have a Polit and so
definitely.
forth, could be supportive. A Haller, I don't know if he's in the team. Like, Haller was a lead out for Christoph. Why is he never mentioned as potential lead out? I'd love to see Haller back as a lead out. He was pretty good at his job.
He would be their best second last man. Haller should be the second last man, and Van Poppel the last man. Like that's Haller is very, very good. And then you have Perlet and Purstelberger. Perlet is the 1600-meter man. Purstelberger is the Alaphilippe role fourth man and bring back the break. I think that sort of arrangement's not bad.
According to the article that I just spoke about, they're mentioning that Ryan Mullen is the 1K guy, that then Archbold is the next one in row, and then Van Poppel is the final man. So they're choosing a different lineup than we are.
Okay, I think Matthew Walls as a last man also could be really, really fucking good. Like he's
Yeah,
fast. He's got that track seated movement. I think Matt Walls could be really good leader, but he's probably too good for that, and I
yeah.
want him to be winning his own races. Anyway, that's their tour. I'm taking the under on Bennett 1.5 Tour de France stage wins, but one win's still pretty damn good, and I think they'll win one from the break with a Conrad type thing. Vuelta, we're not sure. Vuelta, I think their Vuelta last year, Benji, was like, I forgot they were there.
Yeah.
But Agita's going. So hopefully Agita perks up. Do you think he will top 7 GC at the Vuelta?
I hope he will, because I'm kind of a Higuita fanboy myself. Not in depth, but I like the rider and I hope that he does something. But the problem is that I would have loved to see him at the Giro, so I'm kind of salty that they only sent him to the Vuelta. So why the fuck did he go to Bora if he only gets to go to the bloody Vuelta because they signed 17 second tier GC riders? Like, I would have rather had seen him be at EF and get an opportunity at the Giro.
I mean, he got the tour. I guess the deal probably would have been done before that Tour de France, which is helping run a little bit. But
Yeah,
yeah, well, actually, not even. He was freed. He was in the stage 9 break. Yeah,
yeah, he
what am I
was.
talking about? I don't know. But over unders time, Benji, they had 8 World Tour wins last year. I'm going to set the over under at. With Bennett coming back, I have to set it higher. I set the over under at 9.5.
Okay. I think they are going to get under.
Okay.
And I do think most of the victories are going to be Bennett when it comes to World Tour. But I think their youngsters are not at the level yet that they're going to win World Tour races. Like Jordi Meus, perhaps one if he's lucky, but I just don't see it yet. And then we look at Matthew Walls at Bologna could be trying to get some victories there. Or is that who would you send to Bologna if you look at this team when it comes to their sprinter? Matt Walls is the one that comes into my mind, but wouldn't surprise me if they just sent Martin Laas instead.
Probably Walls. I'd say Walls. But Yeah, I'm taking the over. You know how many wins they had at World Tour level in 2019, Benji? 31. Now, there was Tour Down Under and Guangxi, 3 of them, but 31 is a lot. So I just think Bennett
Yeah.
probably takes like 5 at various races, and then they make up another 5. So I think they're over 9.5.
Yeah, you're kind of right. But I'm going to go under because I'm contrarian today.
I tricked you by withholding that statistic until you'd set your over under, and
Damn
then
it.
said they won 31 2 years ago. But any hot takes, Benny, that you've got written down? My hot take is that Leonard Chemner comes storming back, wins a Giro stage, wins another 2 World Tour
Yeah.
races, and is the best German rider in the world.
Okay, I'm going to, just to annoy you because you didn't expect too much from him this year, Kian Uitebrooks is going to win a race, just any race. I don't
Oh,
care
that's
which
not even
one.
hot. Come on.
Okay, he's going to win
He's doing 211 here.
He's going to win a race above U23 level, so a pro race. So divisions including World Tour, .pro, or 1.1, 1.2. No, 2.1? I don't even know the divisions anymore.
I mean, I'll
Is that
wait.
not hot?
I'll let the audience respond as
Okay.
to whether I think that's just a little
Pro or
coal embers that have burnt out, and that maybe you can warm your hands against, but not hot. I
Okay,
need dot
a
pro or
pro
above. I
race
need
or
dot pro or
above.
above. Okay.
Well, he's not lined up for World Tour race, so I can't say
Yeah.
he's going to win World Tour races, can I? He's even lined up for pro races.
All right, I'll allow it. I'll allow what you originally said. Will he win DC at Settimana and L'Avenir?
L'Avenir, no. I don't feel like that is ideal for a rider like him. But Settimana might actually work out. So I'm curious there.
You don't think it
Now, okay. Jesus. I'm scared. I think that Edith Culling is going to win 2 World Tour races.
Facts.
Is that not hot?
Facts.
Okay.
Well, he doesn't do that many. That's the problem. Like, he probably win Brabants, which we like that, and that's a really good result. And it's not even a World Tour race. But I get your point. Edith Schelling, I think, wins a couple of big races as well on this team. I think the lead out will change 4 different times from the start to the end of the year, and will be a big point of contention. That's my. I think that's just one to watch because lead outs are hard to get right, and even good lead outs that were good can, like Zerlig and Schwarzman, can not be that good in the end.
I don't have a hot take necessarily about Frederik Wandal, but I believe that he's going to have a good season. I just feel it. Danish rider on the team seems to be pretty talented. Started off well as well in the Mallorca challenges last year. Not the best season ever, but I think he's going to be a step up at BORA-hansgrohe, and I'm curious what that will deliver this year instead of last year.
He doesn't look very good, but yeah,
come on,
maybe he was 19
happening.
last year. He was 20 last year, so I'll allow it. We'll see. He's very young, and yeah, maybe they're basically they're kind of doing what DSM is doing, except they still have a really good team, and so I shouldn't criticize them for having really young guys, developing them with 3-year deals like Van Dal and Belgian Remco. It's easy for me to say. I'm too embarrassed to say his name now. Benji corrected me. Before we sign off, that was our review of preview of BORA-hansgrohe. A bit of a loose mood today. We need to tighten this up, Benji. We'll go now into our interview with Matt Walls, who we're both pretty high on for this year in his second year at World Tour level as probably a lead sprinter in the .pro sort of races for BORA-hansgrohe. Really interesting interview, and let us know if you enjoyed it. Welcome to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. Matt Walls, Olympic gold medalist and the silver medal at Tokyo. More importantly, for this road cycling podcast, 2 pro wins in 2021 at Norway and Piemonte in his Neo-Pro year. What is your plan this year, or the team's plan in conjunction with the team? Are you going to focus on sort of what Viviani used to do with like maybe Gent-Wevelgem, but then stage races? Because he's a similar rider, or more classics? What's the plan?
So basically, I kick off with the last stage of Mallorca Challenge, followed by Valencia, and then I got a few races in Belgium. Got an opening weekend, and a few there. So it'd be nice to get involved there. And then I got a few stage races throughout the year, and hopefully do the Vuelta as well.
Oh, okay, cool. And will you be, do you think, the sprinter at the Vuelta because Bennett's doing the Tour? Is that how you understand it will be?
Yeah, maybe. I don't really know actually, but
Yeah, it's a long way
yeah,
away.
hopefully I will be. But yeah, there's a long way to. There's a long season to go yet. So
yeah, and where I said Viviani, do you agree that's a similar comparison or not really? He's obviously a track guy. You literally competed against him at Tokyo and then found a lot of success in sort of, I don't know, 15 through 18, 19 before he went to Cofidis. Yeah. Is that the sort of rider you hope to develop into or even better?
Yeah, I think so. To be honest, at the minute, I'm not really sure how I'm going to develop. If it's going to be, on some of the slightly hillier stage races, it's still kind of finishing a bit of a bunch sprint or reduced group sprint at least, or some like classics, them kind of races. But I'm still trying to determine where I kind of fit in and where I'm gonna go throughout my career and how I'm going to develop.
Yeah, because that Norway stage, the one you won, the Stavanger one, it had like a 500-meter kicker, relatively close to the end. But then you opened that up early. Were you thinking, I've gone too early here? That was against the likes of Pedersen and co, who are quick.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I was basically just on Niels for like the last 2K. And yeah, I was kind of waiting for something to happen, and yeah, nothing was really happening. So I just thought, oh well, I kind of have to go now. Otherwise, if they do come round, then they're gonna have like the jump on me. So I just kind of need to go, and basically that's what I did.
It's a pretty impressive long sprint, particularly with the likes of those guys there. And do you, with then Piemonte, was Piemonte the one with the huge crash? Was there a big crash in the last? I can't remember. It was Nizzolo was your main competition, and
yeah, I think there was a crash on like the last corner because it kind of like squeezed together at a roundabout and then come off. But yeah.
And so this year, I don't know, you've got Mallorca coming up, and then are the stage races you mentioned you're doing more likely to be World Tour or still those sort of .pro ones like a Norway or a Deutschland Tour?
I think it's going to be a bit of a mixture.
Okay.
Yeah, as I'm still trying to. Yeah, I think it's quite good to get a bit of a mix for now and see how it goes. Because obviously last year I missed out on quite a few of the races in Belgium after getting COVID.
Okay.
I was meant to have like a pretty decent block of racing there, which I never got. And then obviously I was out for the games for a little bit, and so I think it'd be good to get a bit of a range of different races and different terrain as well, and just see how I cope.
That's what I wanted to ask is how compatible is the Olympics? Like how much does it disrupt your season? Is it less than people think, particularly for like the Madison or the Omnium? And it's just COVID, obviously there's probably a bit of extra time with quarantine, etc. But is it actually something you can slot in pretty easily with, especially as you're a sprinter anyway?
Yeah, I think so. Especially from my side, I only did the Omnium Madison. I didn't do the Team Pursuit. So for me to get myself in the best shape for that, it was basically just road training in the lead up to it.
Oh, okay.
With like a few weeks ago, dropping in, doing bits and pieces, and obviously like doing little bits and pieces throughout the year. But it was mainly road racing and road training coming into it. And I turned it around pretty quick to get my track legs back from doing all the road racing. But then I also swapped over pretty quick from the Olympics straight into Norway, which was 2 weeks later, I think.
Even
so that
less.
was like, so that was a pretty like quick change around, and I managed to find my legs pretty well. So I think it's quite interchangeable now, just with how how the racing is now, and you kind of see that from the road pros that are coming in doing like the Omnium and the Madison, and yeah.
Do you think you'll be doing Paris 2024 or is it 2023? 2024. They're all the years are out of whack. 24.
Yeah. I hope so. I think with BORA now they're pretty happy for me to do little bits and pieces of track throughout the year. So definitely like keep my toe in and do little bits and pieces and yeah, hopefully for Paris as well. It'd be nice to see when what the road course is there as well, because maybe try and do road and track, but we'll have to see.
Well, no, that's a good point you make. Like, if it's in Paris and around there, it's can only have so many hills in it, and even a little bit of hills is kind of nice for you. And the man I'm about to bring up are a couple of people: Hayter, Pidcock, Vernon. All you guys are around the young 20s. A lot of you very quick and punchy. Like, now that you mention it, it's really got my brain ticking that, Britain would be a pretty good chance on that sort of parkour. What about Australia, though? I'm not sure if you've looked at it. That's got a lot of climbing. Do you reckon is that too much for you right now?
I think so. I haven't had like a proper deep look into it yet, but from what I've seen and what I've been told, it seems like it's quite a lot. And if I was going to go like now this second, then it'd probably be too much. But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens and see how the season plays out, and see how much I develop throughout the year and getting more racing under my belt.
I'm still salty about Worlds course. I thought we were going to home cook it for Caleb, and I couldn't believe what I saw. I was like, what is this? I wanted 0 meters elevation. I was kind of expecting that as well.
Yeah.
Well, last question before I let you go. I know you got a race coming up, probably controversial. I mentioned it before we started recording. There's now 2 Ethans in World Tour. Who is the quickest out of you 3? Vernon, you, and Hayter. If 15 is just a pure road sprint, not uphill, because Ethan's pretty good punch uphill. Pure road sprint.
I don't know. I'd probably say just purely off power. Probably Vernon. But I don't know. We'll have to see, and hopefully we get a race all 3 of us are at, and we're all going for the sprint, and we can get the result of that.
Maybe you'll lock out Omloop or Kerner 1, 2, 3, and there's Stewart as well. There's Askey, a lot of classic stars going through. I'd give it to you right now. I'll put that on the record. I think you're quicker. Piemonte, Norway. I know Hayter won GC into a Britain stage, but I think pure road sprint, you're a bit quicker. But Vernon remains to be seen. Quick step, don't sign people for no reason. But anyway, thanks for joining the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. Matt, hope you have a good season ahead, already good Neo Pro season, and best of luck with particularly the Vuelta, where I think you'll get some good chances.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to the BORA-hansgrohe podcast, and thanks for Matt to making the time for that interview. Best of luck to him for the rest of the season, and we have upcoming the Jumbo, EF, Bahrain, UAE previews before the season kicks off in earnest, as well as I have Saudi Tour rights, and I'll be doing highlights of them, and Benji and I will be doing, of course, Valenciana. Bit of a change to scheduling this year. When the good riders go, we will go to Valenciana. We will be covering on the podcast with daily recaps. So stay tuned for that, and we'll see you in the next one.